It was a quiet Monday morning when Carla Ramirez, freshly appointed as the chief investigator for Harborville County, drove her old, reliable blue SUV along the coast highway. Carla cherished these early morning drives. The breeze was crisp, with a hint of salt from the nearby ocean, and it gave her a moment to gather her thoughts about leading her new team at the Harborville Investigations Unit. Though she was new to this leadership role, Carla was seasoned in the field with over 10 years of hard-earned experience. Even with her recent promotion, she stayed grounded and preferred to keep a low profile. As she neared the bend by Exit 9, she noticed the patrol cars flashing red and blue lights behind her. Startled, Carla glanced at her dashboard to double-check her speed. She wasn't speeding, hadn't missed any signals, and knew her tags were all in order. Perplexed, she slowed down and pulled onto the shoulder, waiting for the officers to approach her vehicle. Two officers exited the cruiser behind her, looking every bit the part in their dark sunglasses and neatly pressed uniforms. One, a tall, muscular man with a crew cut, knocked on her window with a faint but firm tap. Carla rolled it down, giving him a polite nod as he stood watching her with a cool expression. "Good morning, officers. Is there a reason you've pulled me over?" Carla inquired, her voice calm and unassuming. "License and registration," the taller officer requested without elaboration, his tone almost robotic. She handed over her documents, noting his name tag, Officer Burke. His partner, a shorter officer named Finch, peered into her vehicle suspiciously from the other side, inspecting her interior as if looking for evidence. "What brings you through this area?" Officer Finch questioned, his tone clipped. "I'm on my way to the station," she answered smoothly, avoiding any unnecessary details. Officer Burke took her license, examining it with a frown. Finch wandered around the back of her SUV, occasionally shooting her a look filled with vague distrust. Carla observed them silently, feeling an unusual tension in the air, but unsure of its origin. Burke leaned closer. "You work nearby?" he asked, his tone laced with a touch of doubt. "Yes, just down the road," Carla replied. She kept her voice steady, not wanting to give them any reason to escalate the situation. Burke shot a glance at Finch, and the two exchanged a whispered conversation, punctuated by occasional glances back at Carla. She waited patiently, though her fingers tapped softly on the steering wheel, a small sign of her growing impatience. After a lengthy pause, Burke returned to her window. "Please step out of the vehicle," he ordered abruptly. Carla's brow furrowed. "May I ask what this is about?" "Step out, now," Finch barked, his hand moving to his holster as if to reinforce the command. Sighing, Carla unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out, standing tall as the two officers moved closer, creating a perimeter around her. "Would either of you care to explain what this is about?" she asked, keeping her voice firm yet calm. Burke folded his arms, a smirk twitching at the corner of his mouth. "We had reports of a vehicle like yours in the area, possibly tied to some unsavory activity." "Unsavory?" Carla repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Mind being a bit more specific? Why don't you leave the questions to us?" Finch interrupted sharply, clearly annoyed by her calm demeanor. The officers began a cursory search of her vehicle, their movements methodical but laced with suspicion. Carla watched, her mind racing. This seemed more than a routine stop. It felt deliberate. She knew her rights and would have challenged them, but she sensed they were trying to provoke a reaction. So, she waited, her stance unyielding, her expression cool. "Looks like she's clean," Finch finally grumbled as he backed away from the car, clearly disappointed. Burke, however, wasn't done. "We're bringing you in for questioning," he stated, his voice a mix of authority and curiosity. At this, Carla allowed herself a small, knowing smile, a hint of humor mixed with a challenge. "Are you certain that's necessary?" Before the officers could answer, an unmarked black SUV pulled up behind them. Out stepped Inspector Ray Moore, a senior official from Harborville County and someone the officers reported to directly. "Carla," he called, his tone professional yet friendly. "Is there an issue here?" Burke and Finch went pale as realization dawned on them. Carla Ramirez wasn't just another civilian. She was their new chief investigator. The arrival of Inspector Ray Moore was like a sudden jolt, cutting through the heavy silence and tension surrounding the officers and Carla Ramirez. Officer Burke's hand instinctively slipped off his holster, and he stepped back, his face losing color as he processed what was happening. Officer Finch, usually brimming with confidence, stood frozen, arms awkwardly hanging by his sides, as realization dawned. Carla, the woman they had been scrutinizing on the side of the road, wasn't just any driver. She was their superior, the new chief investigator for Harborville County. Inspector Moore approached with a steady, authoritative gaze, glancing between Carla and the two officers. "Can someone explain to me what's going on here?" His voice was calm, but held a weight that demanded answers. He looked directly at Burke and Finch, waiting for them to justify their actions. Burke stammered, We stopped her because her vehicle matched the description of a car reported for suspicious behavior in the area." "Suspicious behavior?" Moore repeated slowly, shifting his focus to Carla, who stood silently with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Moore knew Carla well enough to recognize what was happening. This wasn't just a random incident. She was evaluating her new team, watching to see how they handled their duties, and it was clear they'd failed the test. Since Moore's arrival, Carla hadn't uttered a single word. She remained silent, letting the weight of the moment sink into the two officers. They hadn't realized who she was when they initiated the stop, but now, standing in front of their inspector, the reality was sinking in, and they had nowhere to hide. Moore folded his arms, his tone tightening. "So let me get this straight. You pulled over a vehicle without providing any clear reason, demanded the driver step out without explanation, and now you're claiming you had grounds to detain her." Burke looked down, struggling for a response. Finch shifted uncomfortably, his eyes on the ground. Finally, Carla broke the silence. "Did either of you run my license?" Her tone was calm, but her question was sharp. Burke looked up, startled. We were getting to that." Carla raised an eyebrow. "So, that's a no. You didn't confirm my identity. You simply saw me, assumed my presence here was suspicious, and acted accordingly." Finch tried to interject. "It's not like that, Chief." She cut him off with a raised hand. "Let me guess. You assumed I'd just comply, no questions asked, right?" A thick silence followed. Neither officer met her gaze. Moore's voice cut through, firm and disappointed. "Do you understand how serious this is? You just stopped and questioned the chief investigator of your own department without protocol. Imagine the message this sends about how we treat members of this community." Finch's face reddened as he stumbled over his words. We didn't mean to." Moore held up his hand, stopping him. "You didn't mean to what? Skip protocol? Disregard basic respect." Burke, desperate to salvage the situation, tried, "We thought." "No," Carla interrupted. "That's the problem. You didn't think. You didn't confirm who I was, didn't follow procedure, and instead assumed the worst without a second thought." The two officers stood there, the gravity of their actions settling heavily on them. There was no escaping the fact that they had crossed a line. Moore turned to Carla. "How would you like to proceed?" Carla took a deep breath, a flicker of frustration still evident in her gaze, but she remained composed. This wasn't just about her. It was about setting a precedent. She had an entire department to lead and hold accountable. "I'm not going to fire you," she said finally. Both officers breathed a visible sigh of relief, but Carla's expression quickly erased any sense of comfort. "However, there will be consequences," she continued, turning to Moore. "I want both officers suspended immediately while we conduct an internal review. This isn't about saving face. It's about ensuring that no one else goes through something like this. Not me, and certainly not anyone else in Harborville." Moore gave a nod. "Consider it done?" Carla stepped closer to the officers, her eyes locking with theirs, her words deliberate. "Wearing this badge means something. It means serving with integrity. Earn it every single day." The two officers watched as Carla and Inspector Moore walked back to the unmarked SUV. They knew this was far from over. In moments of conflict, we often forget that true strength lies in understanding, not confrontation. This scene reminds us that when tensions rise, stepping back and seeking empathy can lead to resolutions that brute force cannot. The confined space of an airplane symbolizes how, in life, we're all on shared journeys with others. No matter our backgrounds or roles, respect and open communication can prevent clashes. Instead of letting pride or position dictate actions, embracing patience and kindness in tough situations strengthens our character and ultimately brings peace to everyone involved. Leadership is about guidance, not domination.